Lamar Jackson is ready to wrap up the MVP in a Christmas Day showdown with the Houston Texans. We talk about that, how both teams match up against each other, and so much more coming up on a Christmas Day game day edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here on this game day. It's a Wednesday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every day. Free and available all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. Same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out on any content, whether you decide to watch or listen. And we bring you news, analysis, updates. We go live after every single Ravens game, which we will do today after the Ravens and Texans game is over. We go live after every piece of big news. So tell a friend, tell a family member, we are here for them and, of course, here for you on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a bigger turn on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You're going to start with $100. You're going to start with $200. And you're going to start with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Man, it's a Wednesday. It's Christmas Day, and we have Ravens football, which is absolutely incredible. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays. And I hope that the Ravens can pull out a win for everybody involved here in Baltimore, because it's a big game for the Ravens. Still not in front in the AFC North. They need to start with a win today and hope for a Steelers loss against the Chiefs. But we're going to be diving into how the Ravens match up with the Texans. It's kind of weird because, we do game day episodes on Sundays, but obviously we're here on Wednesday, so this is a regular just weekday edition of the show. We're going to talk about how the Ravens and Texans match up. So we're going to do offense, defense, offense. We're going all around the field here. We'll also talk about Lamar being ready to secure the MVP, because I do think if he has a big game on Wednesday, that could end the MVP race. The media is continuing to gang up on Lamar. There are some people in the media who are giving Lamar love. Just some classic MVP conversation there, and then we'll get into some predictions in the final part of the show as well. So let's start off here. I think Lamar is ready to secure the MVP. I'm confident in Lamar in this game. Part of that has to do with the opponent they're playing in Houston, who is just so banged up right now due to injuries. I mean, obviously, covering this team, I've been covering them since 2019, and you can go back further than that if you want injury-plagued Ravens seasons, obviously. But going through 2021 and 2022, and honestly, a bunch of other years, it's tough because the Ravens, luckily, knock on wood, I'm very thankful for this. Up to this point, I'm not jinxing anything. Up to this point, they've been very healthy, and multiple players, coaches have spoke on that, and it's been a real thing. But there have been Ravens seasons that you think, oh, there's so much potential, and then they're derailed due to so many injuries, and that I feel like is what Houston is dealing with this season. They lose Stephon Diggs. Tank Dell suffers a horrific injury last week, and they're losing offensive linemen. They're losing defensive backs. And so when you look at Houston's stats on the year, let's start with Ravens offense first, Texans defense. So Houston defensively, they're not a bad pass defense. They have Derek Stingley. They have talented players there. They're the second best pass defense in the league in terms of net yards per attempt. I know that people might look at that Houston defense, and they've lost some guys. Jalen Petrie is a huge loss to that defense. They've lost Jimmy Ward, who got injured last week. So they're trying to makeshift this defense, makeshift this team, and that brings you into some trouble. Rush defense, they're 11th. This is not a bad Houston defense, and it hasn't been all season. On that defensive line, they have absolute ballers. Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, you have Danico Autry, a bunch of other players, Tim Settle. Like, you have players there. But I just feel like with this offense, it's going to come down to Lamar being able to hit guys like Zay Flowers, assuming he plays. I know he's questionable for the game at the time of this recording. I don't know if he's going to play or not. I anticipate he will, but we'll obviously find out. I'd expect maybe a little more of what we saw against Pittsburgh from this Ravens offense, where I feel like they're going to have to use the short passing game a little bit. And honestly, they should. They should get the screen game going. They should get the quick game going. That is an extension of your run game. And if Baltimore can get that run game going, and honestly, they should probably just do what they did against the Steelers, which is try to establish the run early with Derrick Henry. If that works, that opens up your entire play action game because linebackers have to cheat up at the line. It's what we saw against Pittsburgh. There's video evidence of this all season. And so if Lamar and this Ravens offense can do that, maybe Lamar has a couple of design runs himself since, we're looking at an even more new and improved Lamar. Obviously, we talk about him being new and improved from 2023 to 2024. Well, from the bye week on, his mom cussed him out. We know the whole storyline behind that. I've certainly made that known on social media. It's kind of a funny thing to keep track of, but I feel like Lamar's going to have a couple of those or maybe just scrambles where he takes off. So I think there are so many ways that this Ravens offense can attack this Texans defense, but I do think it comes down to the offensive line. Daniel Falele banged up in this game, or I guess he was banged up last week, and this is tough for both teams. We look at the injury reports for both sides. It is very lengthy, at least compared to for Baltimore. They've had some weeks where the injury report's been practically non-existent, which has been incredible, but if you play 3 games in 11 days, that's tough on any team. And Lamar Jackson has strong messages for these schedule makers, a lot of other Ravens players, Texans players, Steelers, former Steelers, everybody who was playing in that 3-game and 11-day stretch has had words. But to me, the big thing with Houston's defense, you have to be able to get in the red zone against this Houston defense because third down, Houston's good on defense. They're 8th in the league, giving up just 35.7 conversion percentage there. But in the red zone, they are a bottom 5 defense. They give up 64.1% there. If you can get into the red zone, obviously stuff I've talked about forever here on Locked On Ravens is getting into the red zone and scoring 7, not settling for 3. And Baltimore's done a good job of that this season. And I've been really impressed with how they've been able to do that. They are the top red zone offense in the NFL this season, 72.9% of their conversions there. So I think, look, that is strength on weakness because we talk a lot about the Ravens defense, for example, just to switch gears a tad. We talk about the Ravens defense as this bend, don't break unit where, yeah, there are a lot of possessions where it's almost like you feel, oh, wow, this opposing offense is really moving the ball down the field, right? And man, it really feels like they're getting easy yards. But then once that opposing offense gets into Baltimore's red zone or even inside Baltimore's 30, it feels like that defense tightens up. Red zone defense is hard. And, based off of certain, where you are in the red zone, like if you're at the 1-yard line, of course, you're going to bring your heavy personnel in there. And I know that some teams find it harder to score from the 1 than from the 5 just because of the personnel that you have to bring in. But if Baltimore's offense can get, let's say, 3 red zone trips, right? Let's say they go 3 for 3 in the red zone. I'm not sure that Houston's offense has enough firepower against this new Ravens defense, this rejuvenated Ravens defense, to if the Ravens score, let's say, 27 points, you get 3 touchdowns and two Justin Tucker field goals. Can Houston surpass 27 points with no Stephon Diggs, no Tank Dell, and that other offensive injury thing, offensive line not playing well, this, that, and the other, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here. I feel confident in Baltimore's offense. But here's the thing that I really want to see, and we'll talk about this a little more in the final part of the show too. I want to see Baltimore's offense get off to a very fast start, like continuously fast start and have a consistent 60-minute game. Because stuff that we've seen even going back to last year with this Todd Monken offense is sometimes they will start slow and then they'll find their rhythm over the course of the rest of the game, or they'll start fast, but then they'll fizzle out. I would love to see just 60 minutes of dominant football. I think the closest thing we have seen to that is probably that Buffalo game, right? There was, I guess, a little question in between, like, okay, is Buffalo going to come back in that third quarter? Denver was one of those games, right? I guess Tampa, except towards the end, was one of those games. In that Pittsburgh game, it was like, oh, well, there are moments, and okay, Ravens look great, and then, oh, man, this isn't great, and then, okay, hey, back to being good. I'd like to see a consistent 60-minute effort from this offense. Start off with a bang, middle of the game, consistent, and then end of the game, you just say, all right, we're ending this thing now. So Baltimore's offense comes into this game again. They're top rushing offense in the league. I think that should shock absolutely nobody. And then they're also the top pass offense, rush and pass. they're the best offense in the league, in my opinion. Sometimes they're a bit inconsistent. Sometimes they can play down to opponents. They've had issues at times, but here's the big thing. This goes for the defense too, and I'll say it again on the second part of the show. Keep the penalties down. Keep them down. 2 penalties for 10 yards against Pittsburgh. That is what you need to have against this Houston Texans team because, yes, they might be banged up. Yes, they might be injured. They still have talented players up and down that defense. Coming up in the second part of the show, though, we will talk about the Texans offense versus Baltimore's defense, strengths, weaknesses, how they match up with each other. So be sure to stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It is thrilling, and not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has those bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oshek are still here with you on Christmas. It is a game day episode as the Ravens and Texans face off on Christmas Day. Again, a Merry Christmas to everybody out there. I hope your Christmas is merry and bright and everything, and happy holidays, of course, as well. I mean, for me, I've had a ton of things to be thankful for and a ton of things that, for, just looking back during the holiday season as we come up on the end of the year, I've received a lot of great gifts here on Locked On Ravens. The biggest one is the support of everybody who, whether it's in audio form or video form, continues to tune in, continues to watch, listen, and support me in general. We've had a lot of great milestones this year, and even just recently with 10,000 subscribers, we had our first 30,000 view episode that's almost up to 40,000 now, just a couple of days ago. So it's been amazing, and I'll obviously reflect a little bit more as we come up on the new year. But even just for the holiday season, you reflect a little bit on your year, and I can't thank everybody enough for sticking it out with me here on Locked On Ravens. Started this thing up in 2019, and audio form, that was our start. Did that for a couple years, and then we moved on to video form. Well, not moved on. We still have audio form and video form. So whether you're an audio listener, a video watcher, thank you for everything that you have been able to give me this holiday season, and it's incredible, and I'm ready to continue this journey on Locked On Ravens. But let's get into the Ravens defense against the Texans offense. Now, CJ Stroud, it's been a bit of a rough year for him based off of what we saw last season. I mean, CJ was this incredible player last year. I mean, literally one of the best quarterbacks in the league last year, in my opinion. But it's been a lot rougher for him this season, and you wouldn't really expect that with them going out there, giving up significant assets to go out there and get Stephon Diggs. But Diggs is done. He got injured pretty early in the season, and they've had to kind of put together. Nico Collins missed some time, and now he's back. Now Tank Dell obviously done for the season. It's just CJ's had a lot of inconsistency with his weapons. Now they brought in Joe Mixon from Cincinnati in the offseason, someone who Baltimore obviously is very familiar with him being in Cincinnati for so long. But he's been great. But it's been the offensive line, in my opinion, that has really been the Achilles heel of the Texans on offense, maybe even the entire Texans team this season. It's been very underwhelming. They've had to deal with injuries there as well, underperforming players. CJ doesn't have a lot of time to throw. It's been rough. And you look at a Texans team that has so much talent, or at least on paper has so much talent, it just feels like the year overall, that's kind of the word I'll use, it's been underwhelming. Now, Houston's offense, just for some baseline stats here before we get into other conversations, coming into this game, they are the 17th best rushing offense in the league, 4.2 yards per attempt. I think that's a little misleading. I think Joe Mixon's had a pretty good year. It's just been, the big plays have been great, but there also have been a lot of just, negative runs, no gains. It really is a hit or miss rushing offense. Passing wise, they're 24th in the league, 5.7 yards per attempt. And again, I kind of mentioned why and how that is the case, but it's tough because CJ is a really talented player. I think the Texans did a lot of good things this offseason. I think Stephon Diggs, that was a good move for them. I think Danielle Hunter, them bringing him in, I thought that was a good move for them. But that's why I think it's been so disappointing, because you look at what happened with CJ and D'Amico Ryans last year as a first-time head coach, first-time quarterback duo, and they exceed all expectations. They make it to the divisional round against Baltimore. It's just been a really rough year for them, where they're kind of locked into that 4 seed, my preferred playoff opponent, because I feel like Baltimore, even going on the road again, if they did it in the wild card round, would be able to beat the Texans. Now you're looking at other guys. John Mechie's apparently good to go in this game. They have guys like Dalton Schultz, who's had an underwhelming season there as well. But again, you're relying on a bunch of guys you weren't expecting to rely on, where you're 3 stars at wide receiver. Like, you're 3 stars deep with Diggs, Dell, and Nico Collins. And so you're like, all right, if you're Houston, okay, yeah, you got a couple more depth pieces, but you don't have to invest as much in that position, because your mindset is probably, well, if one goes down, there are still 2 stars and then other depth. That's fine. If 2 go down, I mean, that's kind of your issue. Like, that's a really big issue. With Baltimore's pass defense playing pretty lights out over the course of these past 4 or 5 weeks, that's going to be a tough task, because Nico Collins is the guy you have to pay attention to. Baltimore has had some issues this season going up and stopping top wide receivers. And even when there aren't a lot of other options in offenses that Baltimore plays, it sometimes is, well, the top guy's going to go off, and that's not great. So I'd expect Marlon to have a lot of time on Nico Collins. Now, here's the big thing. I don't expect it to happen. Anything is possible, so maybe it does. The Texans claimed Deontay Johnson on waivers from Baltimore. That move went through on Monday. Look, if he plays, I'd be floored, because you got to learn the playbook. You got to do all this stuff. But Houston is so desperate at wide receiver. Do they throw him out there for like 5 or 10 plays? I don't know what that looks like. It'd be a heck of a storyline. I mean, I'm kind of rooting for it, honestly, because I just want to see the storyline unfold and kind of what the body language is towards Deontay, because we remember the approach from Baltimore on the Deontay situation was, no, he's not a distraction. We support him. Now, John Harbaugh was like, oh, we're going to let this stuff figure it out. I don't think it'll be that kind on the football field, especially for a very physical Ravens defense. So maybe Deontay plays. I don't really expect him to. I think it'd be pretty shocking if he did. But even him just being on that sideline, that's going to be a little spicy. But other than that, I think your top priority, if you're Baltimore, and they're the best run defense in the NFL, so I'm not necessarily worried about this, is stopping Joe Mixon. Stop Joe Mixon, eliminate part of the Texans offense, and I think that can go a very, very long way. So, in my opinion, Baltimore is going to be a team here that, with their defensive personnel, guys like Kadarius Washington stepping up, Trey White, who, again, was on the injury report, I believe he'll play. That's just a guess, but I believe he will. You have new personnel in there, and that even goes beyond the secondary, right? They've made a decision on Trenton Simpson as more linebacker by committee, Malik Harrison, Chris Board, all those guys. If you're this team, you've had a lot of guys that you expect at the beginning of the season to be like, okay, they're going to be big contributors, young guys stepping up. It hasn't worked out that way. Some teams just go through that. And they're like, okay, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Essentially, it's a sunken cost fallacy, which is, we invested money or invested high draft capital in this guy. We're going to use him until we don't have him on the team anymore. Luckily, the Ravens aren't doing that. They have made tough decisions, and I think it has benefited their defense as a whole, to the point now where, I mean, we were talking about Baltimore's pass defense as like this bottom 5, bottom 3 unit for a really long time. Now, there's a lot that the Ravens have given up, especially total yards wise through the air. They're still 31st there, but I go based off of net yards per attempt. And this defense now, this pass defense, it's now the 19th best in the league in terms of the yards per attempt, where, again, we were talking 30, 31st, 28th, 29th. Like, that's a big improvement. And we're seeing Marlon Humphrey have the best year of his career, in my opinion. We're seeing Nate Wiggins step up. It's guys, it's a team effort. It's a team effort. And, Roquan Smith has played better. The defensive line is getting after it. I think against the Houston offense that, again, is missing a lot of weapons, the offensive line isn't great. I would expect Baltimore's defense to do a pretty good job here. Is it going to be perfect? No, they still have to clean up some of the issues in the middle of the field and some other aspects there as well. So, look, I by no means are saying that this is a perfect team that is going to just shut out Houston. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But to me, the key here for the Ravens is getting off the field on third down. They're the 23rd best third down defense in the league. I would hope to see that number a little higher, but it's not. They're okay in the red zone. They're 16th in the league there, so middle of the pack literally there. But you look at Houston on offense, Houston's 15th in the league on third down. They're 22nd in the league in the red zone on offense. They're third in the league on fourth down percentage, so maybe this will be a high fourth down game. Who knows? I feel like I like Baltimore's defense better, though. I do. I mean, I like Baltimore's offense better than Houston's defense. I like Baltimore's defense better than Houston's offense. But I will say that the matchup between Baltimore's offense and Houston's defense, I think, is closer than Baltimore's defense versus Houston's offense. Coming up, though, in the final part of the show, we will talk about some predictions. We'll get a little bit into the MVP conversation as well. As we round out this game day episode, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. PrizePicks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your pick hits, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at Jared Goff for more than 230 passing yards and Saquon Barkley for more than 1 touchdown. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back here, our final segment, Locked On Ravens Game Day Edition. Kevin Oestreicher here with you, talking Ravens football. Ravens and Texans set to face off on Christmas Day. Hopefully it's a big win for the Ravens. They're absolutely going to need it if they want to have a shot to win the AFC North. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast here on Locked On Ravens, so be sure to like and subscribe in video form and follow along in audio form as well. We will be live after the game, about 15 minutes, 30 max after the game ends, right here on Locked On Ravens. So, of course, that'll be live on YouTube, but you can also play it back in video form and in audio form where it will be posted right after the live concludes. So we have Ravens content for you every single weekday. This is episode 1,408 consecutively for me, dating back to 2019. So tell a friend, tell a family member. Obviously, social media is the world of promoting over there, but word of mouth also still very, very important. Now, let's talk about some predictions for this game and MVP conversation. We'll start with MVP, and then we'll move to predictions. I think the narrative here for Lamar Jackson, based off of how he performed against Pittsburgh in a big divisional matchup that, had major AFC North implications, and then how Josh Allen performed against the Patriots in a game that, they should have probably won by a lot and they didn't, and Josh Allen should have had a great game and he didn't. Feels like the MVP conversation is really neck and neck, and if Lamar has a great game against Houston, he will wrap up the MVP. And that, to me, is a fair thing. If Lamar goes out against Houston and has a stinker and Josh Allen goes out there and decimates the Jets, Josh Allen probably wins the MVP. This is about giving the guy who deserves the MVP the MVP. If Josh Allen was the most deserving, okay, give it to Josh Allen. If Lamar Jackson is the most deserving, all right, give it to Lamar. The MVP race is not over, and I think that's a lot of the conversation that people are upset with, and I don't really understand that conversation because we still have, at the time we had 3 weeks to go. You see what happens, and it's like, okay, Lamar, you counted him out essentially, and he has a great game. Josh Allen, he's the MVP now he has a stinker game, and now you're back to neck and neck. So Lamar against the Houston defense that, again, is good. They've lost guys, but they are good. If he has a Jackson 5, or if he has 3 touchdowns and 250 passing yards or whatever it may be, that to me is an MVP performance that wraps this thing up because he has 40 total touchdowns. He has broken his career high in single season passing touchdowns. The efficiency numbers are there. There's so much that Lamar has on his side, and there's things that Josh Allen has on his side too. But the thing about voter fatigue, I think it is real, and there have been conversations about how, okay, is the MVP conversation with Lamar and Josh Allen a bit like Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, where Embiid won one season because there was essentially voter fatigue and people didn't want to give Jokic the award, even though his stats were majorly more than what Embiid's were. But Embiid was like, all right, he had a great year, and people were like, let's give the award to somebody else. That to me is not okay. If Embiid deserved the award, Embiid should get the award. If Jokic deserved it, Jokic should get it. And I'm a Nuggets fan, so obviously I'm a little more involved in those conversations. And so Lamar and the Josh Allen thing and voter fatigue, I've been there. I've been in those conversations, and I've had to witness that for the past 3-4 seasons with those two guys. So it's not a new thing to me. It's not a new thing in voting in general. And that to me is not the right way to do it. So in my opinion, Lamar and Josh, both incredible players, both having great years. But the player that deserves the award at the end of the season should get it. We are not at the end of the season yet. That's why, in my opinion, it's not decided. But you do see the stats for Lamar. You do see the impact that he has. There's now a narrative going out again for the second time this season that Derrick Henry is the best player on the Ravens, and he's the reason that the Ravens are doing so well, which is objectively false. It just feels like there are arguments being created for no reason, or just to prop up Josh Allen, like the arm punt thing with CBS on social media, where it's like, okay, Josh Allen throws an interception and you praised it. Like, okay, it's a little crazy there. But let's talk about predictions for the Ravens and Texans game. I think this is a big Mark Andrews game. We've seen Mark Andrews get back on track. The Texans did get back Christian Harris last week or a couple weeks ago, but I feel like, to me, this will be a big Andrews game. I think Zay Flowers, if he plays, should be able to feast as well. I'm predicting Nate Wiggins' first career interception. I'm going there for this game. I haven't done that, I think, at all this season, but I'm going Nate Wiggins' first career interception. And then on defense, I'm going to say Odafe Owe has a big game. We saw him have a big game against the Steelers in that first matchup in Pittsburgh. I'm predicting a big Odafe Owe game. And then in terms of the final score, I mean, we've talked about a lot of what I believe makes the Ravens a better team than the Texans here, why I'm confident in the Ravens to beat the Texans here. I'm not saying this is going to be a blowout by epic proportions of like, oh, the Ravens are going to win by like 30 points or anything like that. I'm not saying that. Houston is still a really good team. They're in front in their division for a reason, partially because their division is just absolutely terrible. But still, you have talent on both sides of the ball. I think Baltimore wins this game. I'm going to go 27-17. I'm going to go 10-point win for the Ravens, 27-17. I ended up being close on the final score last week, by the way. I said 24-17 Ravens, and it actually ended up being 34-17. So I'm going to go 27-17 Ravens over the Texans. Hopefully a big game for Baltimore on the horizon on Christmas Day. But that's all I have for you here today on this Christmas Day edition of Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a game day. And again, we'll be right back here live on Locked On Ravens after the conclusion of Baltimore-Houston, breaking down everything that happened in the game, win, lose, or tie, but hopefully not ties because we do not like ties on Locked On Ravens. So be sure on the way out, hit that like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and subscribe over there as well. I'll see you right back here later today on Locked On Ravens.